When I went off to college in the city, Jake Harding was living it up, dating every girl in his social circle. For some reason, he took an interest in me, the plain, shy, quiet girl. His grand romantic gestures started to win me over. But not even a month into our relationship, he dumped me, saying he was bored. That day, as he watched me walk away into the pouring rain, someone said, "That good girl isn't gonna do something stupid, right?" Jake, already obsessed with his new fling, just asked his best friend, "Hey, West, could you check on her? I'm worried she might try to jump off the pier." That night, the rain was hammering down, and there I was, soaked to the bone, when West pulled me into his lap. He answered a call from Jake, his voice low and drawling, "Yeah, found her." He paused, then lowered his head to whisper into my ear, "You go have fun, bro. She's being a real good girl now." Jake called me, told me to meet him at that club he always goes to, in room 808. When I got there, it started raining. My hair was plastered to my face by the time I stepped out of the cab, and I started shivering from the air conditioning as soon as I walked in. The door to the private room was ajar, and I could hear music playing. It took me a while to spot Jake. He was snuggled up with this super young, gorgeous girl. When he saw me, Jake didn't even flinch. Instead, he just held her closer. I stood there dumbfounded, my mind blank. I couldn't understand what was happening. Jake had chased after me for a solid year. I'd only agreed to be his girlfriend a month ago. And just 3 days before, he'd been smiling, pinching my cheeks, telling me he was so in love with me. Now, he's got another girl on his lap, 100 times prettier and sexier than me. "Leah," Jake said, his voice flat, "I gotta be real with you." The music in the room stopped, and everyone was quiet, like they knew what was going down. I stood there feeling totally exposed and embarrassed. "I was really into you, for a while," Jake continued. "But I'm dating, not joining a monastery, you know? I respect your choices, you're not into it, okay, I get it. But I'm over it, so we're done." The rain-soaked strands of hair stuck to my cheeks, icy cold. I couldn't hear the sounds around me, or see the sideways glances people were giving me. I just stared at Jake, dumbfounded. "But 3 days ago, you told me you loved me." "Jake, I wasn't trying to push you away when I wouldn't kiss you, I just wasn't ready." "Alright, Leah, that's enough," Jake said, cutting me off and looking at me gently. "I want to break up, can you understand that?" Tears that had been welling up finally spilled over. I grew up in a single-parent household, and I was plain, shy, and kind of a pushover. From middle school to college, I was practically invisible. Until I came to this city for school, until I met Jake. It was the first time anyone had ever pursued me like that, made me feel so cherished and adored. I fell for him hard, but now he said he was bored. Was it because of the kiss I didn't give him? Or because I turned down his offer to move in together? My head was spinning, but some part of me still wanted to fix this. "Jake, please, can't we not break up?" Jake frowned. "Leah, do you really want me to say something hurtful? I'm not into you anymore. My taste just took a detour, understand?" I wiped my tears with the back of my hand and took a couple of steps back. "I understand, Jake. Don't look for me again, or try to reach me, okay?" "Yeah, I can do that." I nodded, trying to force a smile, but I just ended up crying even more. "I'm gonna go. Have fun, guys." I wiped my eyes again and stumbled out of the room. "She's so basic," Jake's new girl said. "What made you want to date a girl like that?" "A little bit of novelty, I guess," Jake said, raising his glass, his tone flat. But then he looked towards the door. When he'd first met Leah, he knew she was a bit skittish and goody two-shoes. When he'd stopped her to get her number, her eyes had gone wide and round, like she was about to pass out. It was kind of funny. He'd never met anyone like that before. But that was all it was, a novelty. He wasn't the kind of guy to commit. "The rain's coming down hard out there," someone said quietly. Jake glanced at the terrace. It was a real storm, the rain coming down in sheets. You guys think Leah's gonna do something dumb? Maybe. She looked like she was about to fall apart just now. Jake, should you go check on her? A clap of thunder ripped across the sky. Jake suddenly set his drink down. West. He looked over at West, who'd been silent in a corner all night. Jake didn't want any of the other guys going out there. They were all playboys, and Leah was too innocent. But West, this super rich, connected guy who'd never shown the slightest interest in women. Could you, check on her for me? If she decides to jump into the harbor or something, it'd be a real pain in the ass. West slowly raised his gaze, looking at his friend with an indifferent look. Jake was already regretting the request. West was ice cold and never got involved in anything. If you don't want to. Sure, West said, surprisingly. Jake was a bit thrown by that. West was already standing up, grabbing his suit jacket and walking out. The rain was coming down too hard. I stood on the steps for what felt like forever, and a doorman came over 3 times asking if I wanted an umbrella or help getting a cab. I just nodded absently. I opened up the umbrella they gave me and headed out into the storm. Maybe it was the rain, but I started feeling lightheaded and pretty awful. The wind was howling, and the umbrella kept twisting. That's when West's Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of me. The back window rolled down, revealing his cold, calm face. My hand, already numb with cold, tightened on the umbrella handle. My first instinct was to step back. I'd heard Jake mention West a few times, about how his family had shady connections. All I knew about that stuff was from old gangster movies, where those guys were always ruthless and dangerous. That's why I was always scared of West. I never even dared to look him in the eye. Get in, West said. I'd only taken 1 step back. The rain was slamming against the umbrella, deafening. His voice was quiet, but it sounded like thunder. My feet froze, my eyes going wide. The rain and darkness made it impossible to see the emotions in his eyes. All I felt was fear, the bone-deep fear of knowing how insignificant I was. It ran from my feet to the top of my head. Trembling, I went over to the car. The driver came out and opened the door, taking my umbrella as I mumbled a thank you. I got in, my legs leaden like I couldn't lift them. My wet sneakers left muddy prints on the clean floor mats. I didn't know where to put my hands, I just wanted to disappear. The car moved smoothly forward, its bright headlights slicing through the rain. The Rolls felt like a little boat in the middle of the storm. I was lost in my thoughts when West suddenly said my name. Leah. Yeah? I jerked to attention and looked at him. West's suit was rumpled, and the top 3 buttons of his shirt were unfastened. He was slumped in his seat, legs sprawled out. He looked like a predator, totally relaxed but still in control. My gaze flickered away. My heart was pounding. Where was the car going? What was West going to do? Kill me and dump my body, or tie me up and throw me in the ocean? Maybe sell me on the black market, but I hadn't done anything to him. He raised his leg and nudged my jeans with his shoe. His long fingers tapped his knee. Come here. My head started spinning. I looked at him, my cheeks and the back of my neck prickling with heat. You don't understand? West raised an eyebrow. Come here, sit here. He said it again, slower, his voice very clear. I heard him, but my brain shut down. Then he sounded impatient. Huh? The car hit a bump, and my heart leapt into my throat. I could see all those messed up, violent scenes playing out in my head. My body tensed up, and before I could think, I scrambled to his lap, awkwardly straddling him as he gestured. West's lips curved slightly. He offered me a soft towel. Dry your face. I did as I was told, and his cell rang. He answered, his voice low and lazy. Hey, Jake? The towel in my hand just fell. West glanced at me and smiled. Yeah, I found her. He spoke slowly and softly in the closed space. You have fun. West held the phone with one hand, but with the other, he gently cupped my chin. The rain was pouring down, making everything hazy. The car lurched, and before I could react, I was falling forward. West's lips grazed my cheek. His breath was warm and intimate against my ear. I froze. West didn't push me away. Instead, he kissed the corner of my mouth. His voice was rough. "Don't worry, she's being a good girl." The call ended. In this small, sealed-off world, West's fingers caressed my jawline, slowly pulling me closer. "Leah." His touch was firm, and I had to open my mouth slightly. Then he was kissing me, deep and hard. "Jake doesn't like good girls," he said, his lips against my cheek. "But I do." His kiss got deeper, and I didn't know how to breathe. I was going to suffocate. West paused and slipped his fingers under my sweatshirt. He grabbed the soft flesh of my side and squeezed gently until my breath hitched and my eyes fluttered. My hands grabbed his sleeves, my body trembling. "Don't be afraid." He kissed me again softly. "This isn't the place for your first time." The rain finally stopped late that night. Jake was standing at his window, absently smoking a cigarette. A friend came up to him and sighed. "Leah is such a sweetheart. I bet she's totally terrified right now. West won't hurt her. You know what the guy is like. He hates women. Especially the whiny ones." Jake blew out a cloud of smoke. "A little scare will do her good. You really liked her a lot. You pursued her for a year, and then you just dumped her after a month? She was boring, like a block of wood." Jake laughed. "She didn't want to kiss, or let me touch her. I'm not a monk. Take it slow, Leah seems like a sweet girl." Jake leaned against the glass, a shallow smile playing on his lips. "You don't get it. This will teach her not to play hard to get." "Whatever you say, man. That girl has no chance." "I wasn't going to hurt her." Jake put out his cigarette. "I just need you guys to ignore her for a while, and then she'll be all good for me." "Okay, can't wait till you get back with her." "She's not that hot." "She's a pretty girl, though, nice skin. If she'd get a makeover, she'd be a knockout." Jake's smile disappeared. "When did you all start liking her?" "Well, at first she was such a square," one of his friends answered. "But she's really improved lately. She wears nice stuff now." "Last time you guys went out she wore this green dress," the other guy added. "She's got some legs on her, man, long and white, you know?" Jake's face went cold. "What are you talking about?" "Just saying, she's changed a lot. Don't you think so?" Jake turned, glaring, and walked out. "If you guys are so into her, go for her then." "Dude, she's hung up on you. I wouldn't even try." That remark made Jake feel better, a bit. He'd been thinking of giving her the cold shoulder for a month. Teach her to be obedient. But now, he thought half a month was enough. After all, Leah was easily scared and emotional. I got out of the shower, and West was on the terrace, smoking. He was shirtless, with only a pair of loose-fitting pajama bottoms. He looked huge, his chest and abs on full display. I stood there, unsure of what to do. I didn't dare go close or talk to him. What West had said in the car was still swirling around in my head. "Coming over here?" West flipped his cigarette and glanced at me. "It doesn't look like it's raining outside," I said nervously. West's place was huge. If he didn't want me to leave, I wouldn't even be able to find the exit. West leaned against the railing and looked at me. "What did you want to say?" His hair was damp, and there was something chilly in his eyes. I looked at him and quickly down at the floor, my voice small. "I want to go back to school." "Going back to school at this time?" "There's a small apartment some classmates rent near the school. I can stay there for tonight." "You scared of me?" I shook my head, but my face flushed. West didn't say anything, his eyes tracking all over my body. The pajamas the maid had set out were made of the same silky blue material as his pajamas. It looked like we were wearing matching outfits. "You can go back to school, it's not out of the question." I looked at him, bewildered. When Jake talked about West, he'd say he was a horrible person, impossible to deal with. But right now, he seemed surprisingly agreeable. Leah, come over here. I hesitated, but I forced myself to walk toward him. Leaving was what mattered the most, so I should avoid making him angry. I stopped about 3 feet away. He was a few inches taller than Jake, and I was just up to his chest, barely, in my slippers. How long were you with Jake? My lips tightened. Just hearing Jake's name stabbed my heart. West watched me, silent. 1 month and 3 days. You remember it so well. Of course, I did. Jake was my first boyfriend, the first guy I'd ever been with. Why didn't you let him kiss you? He cupped my chin, forcing me to look at him. Tears pricked my eyes. I didn't want to cry for Jake, but my eyes were already beginning to water. It's not that I didn't want to, I wasn't ready. I turned my face away from him, trying to free myself, but he only held me tighter. You were fine with it in the car, he said, his voice still calm, but dangerous. When he brought up all the stuff that happened in the car, I felt a surge of anger and resentment. If I hadn't been so scared, I wouldn't have let him push me around like that and take my first kiss. You think I'm scary? West chuckled. I'm not going to eat you. But everyone says you kill people. Who told you that? They all do. So, you were being a good girl just because you were scared? I kept my head down. West let go of me and his voice suddenly turned cold. You can stay here for a while. No, I was frantic. You said I could go back to school. I just said that it wasn't impossible to go to school. What do I have to do to go back? I didn't want to miss any classes. This year abroad was something I'd worked hard to get. I just wanted to graduate and find a job and escape my messed up family life. It's simple. West's fingers brushed the wet strands of hair from my face. Kiss me. On purpose. Jay just won? West looked amused. Keep kissing till I'm satisfied. My eyes widened. I couldn't believe someone would say something like that out loud. West reached for my waist, and before I could react, my body was plastered against his bare chest. His eyes were fixed on me as his breath warmed my skin. Leah, he said, his lips twisting a little. If you don't kiss me till I'm happy, the ocean is right outside. I'll throw you in, and the fish can eat you. My skin went ice cold under his touch. West's grip tightened, so our bodies were perfectly aligned. All the terror I'd felt when I first got into the car came back. I opened my mouth, my tongue twisted in knots. I finally managed, my voice shaking. How will I make you happy? West looked at my face. It wasn't classically pretty. Her eyes were small, her eyebrows were pale. The crease in her eyelids was barely there, an arc only at the corners. But her lashes were thick and long. Her nose was a little upturned, and her chin was round with a little dimple. Her biggest asset was her skin, which was so fair, and her figure was petite. When he held her, all he could think about was how soft she felt. He remembered her on his lap in the car, her hair wet, with drops of water on her face. When he kissed her lips, they were soft and elastic, like jello. It was really strange. She hadn't even started kissing him yet, but just thinking about it got him hard. Now, she was looking at him, her dark eyes reflecting his face. Then his eyes dropped to her lips, now soft and pink again, from her bath. He had a sudden urge to mess her up. Want to know? He ran a finger over her lips. She seemed hypersensitive to his touch, her body trembling. Yes. West smiled. You'll figure it out soon. Now, kiss me, Leah. I'd never kissed anyone before. West was so tall, I had to go up on my toes to reach his mouth. Maybe it was the atmosphere, or how West's face was so alluring. My head was spinning. When my lips touched his, I felt a burst of heat. Open your mouth. West's voice was hoarse. Huh? I looked at him blankly. As my lips parted, West took control. He kissed me deeply, hungrily. He pulled me into his arms as if he wanted to break me. Leah. West's hand covered my eyes. Close them. The rain that had stopped had started again, scattered and light. The man's breathing grew heavier in the huge bedroom. About half an hour later, everything went quiet. I rubbed my sore wrists and sat up on the bed. West was leaning against the headboard and leaned in to kiss my swollen lips. Tired? I nodded. My wrists were sore and my lips were numb. There was a weird scent in the air, something musky. I couldn't help thinking that, judging by West's face, he must have enjoyed it. Can I go now? He nodded, looking pretty satisfied. You can go. I smiled, ready to hop up. But then he said, you still have to come back tomorrow. Why? I asked, shocked. Weren't you happy? West frowned. Don't say it like that. He paused, his face changing. I may have been happy, but you're still bad at it. His gaze dropped to my hands. Clumsy and a slow learner. But it felt nice. He did have to admit that. Her innocence and inexperience were oddly stimulating. You get to choose. You can sleep with me until the end, or you can come back here every night. I didn't need more than a few seconds. I'll come back every night. Anything would be better than sleeping with him. I still believed, after all these years, that you shouldn't sleep with a man before you marry him. Send me your class schedule. I'll pick you up. I had to take a stand. Can I just come here myself? If he picked me up, everyone would freak out. I didn't want to be the center of attention. Don't worry, I'll take a different car. I doubt you own a car that isn't flashy. West changed the subject. Bring me cookies tonight, the ones you bake yourself. You know I bake cookies? His voice gave nothing away. You brought Jake some a few times. He never ate them, but I think they taste pretty good. He never ate any? I felt a stab of pain. I'd spent so much time making the cookies, just for Jake to toss them aside. It wasn't like the cookies were anything special, but I put my heart into it. If he didn't like them, he should have just told me. Get some sleep, I'll drop you off at school when it gets light. West pulled me closer, and as I was about to pull away, he grabbed my hand and pressed it against him. Don't move, it will only make it worse for you. I went rigid. West chuckled. You are such a good girl. Sleep, Leah. I begged him all the way to school, before he agreed to stop the car a block away from campus. As I was getting out, I mustered the courage to ask another favor. Tonight, when you pick me up, can we meet at the same place? West leaned back in his seat and looked up at me. You worried about the other students seeing us? Or are you worried about Jake? I clutched the edge of my shirt, my voice quiet. Both. Why don't you want Jake to find out? I had no answer. Maybe it was because we'd broken up just the night before. Maybe because things with West were so weird and undefined. I didn't want people to gossip. Both Jake and West were from a different world than me. This morning, I finally realized that Jake had only been interested in me for the novelty. I'd read more into it, thinking his feelings were genuine. A plain, normal girl like me should never dream of having a fairy tale ending. Thanks to him, I was awake, I was clearer on where I stood. I just want to focus on my studies. I took a deep breath and met his gaze. West, I know you're just messing with me, I'm just a novelty. Once you're bored, you'll lose interest. And then, we'll never see each other again. So, there's no need for anyone to know about this, right? West's face went cold. He didn't say anything, just gestured for me to get out. The car pulled away without a single pause. I just stood there for a few seconds before walking slowly toward campus. Jake sent his new girlfriend 999 Frisia roses. The news spread like wildfire. He'd chased after me for a year and, after dating me for a little over a month, was doing the same thing to someone else. His previous gestures now seemed like a joke. Some people laughed at me, while others stood up for me. But I didn't let it bother me. I went to class, the library, and the cafeteria, just like always. When classes finished, I went to the bakery and made some cookies. West didn't come. He sent his driver. He just took the cookies. Mr. West is in his hometown for some work, the driver said. He was an older gentleman, with soft eyes. Will you want more cookies tomorrow? I'll be back at this time. Is that okay, Miss Leah? Yes. See you then. For about a week, I didn't see West. But I kept making the cookies every day. On the 7th day, the driver asked for a double batch the next day. Mr. West said that he'll be needing it tomorrow night. I didn't ask any questions, just nodded. As I went back to school, I saw Jake dropping off his girlfriend. When our eyes met, I just looked away. Jake called me Leah. What do you want? I tried to sound flat and uninterested. Jake put an arm around his new girl and stared at me with the same gentleness he'd shown me before. So, my girlfriend really liked the cookies you made before. I was wondering if you'd make some more for this party I'm having. I'll pay you triple what you asked before. I shook my head. Sorry, I have a lot of papers to work on, I can't. Jake raised an eyebrow. Well, that's too bad. I turned and walked away, trying to act casual. Later that night, Jake stopped me outside of my dorm. Leah, he said. Jake was wearing a simple white shirt, which seemed familiar. It took me a moment to remember that he wore that same shirt when he'd asked me out. I'd said I loved him in a white shirt, because it made him look so pure and kind. What is it? Are you mad? Mad about what? About me asking you to bake cookies for my girlfriend. No, I'm just busy. West needed a double batch of cookies, and I didn't have time to make any for Jake and his friends. You have just one class tomorrow. I'm busy with other things. Leah, Jake moved closer. The streetlights were a warm orange color that made his eyes even softer. He used to walk me home under this same light. Many times he had tried to kiss me here, but I was too shy, and I always pulled away. Do you want to get back together? If you think we went too fast, then we can take it slow. And when you graduate, we can move in together, okay? The streetlight lit up his face, making him look incredibly charming. He was the first guy I had ever liked. And, to be honest, a part of me still ached. But I shook my head. His smile faded. I won't give you a second chance. Don't say that you weren't warned, Leah. West arrived at the club at 7. He grabbed 2 paper bags from his bodyguards. There was a faint aroma, mixed with the light scent of roses. Leah must have added some rose water to the dough. She'd said it was good for your throat. He wasn't a big fan of sweet stuff, but now he was happy to have it. The servers opened the door to the private room. Jake was smoking, looking grim. Everyone stood up when they saw West. Jake crushed his cigarette and stood up. West, why were you in your hometown so long this time? West smiled and put the paper bags on the table. Had some personal business that kept me busy. Jake was about to speak when he caught sight of the paper bags. What's that? Cookies. West took off his jacket and gave it to a server. He sat on a couch and said, in his normal lazy drawl, they're pretty good. I've been having them every day. Want to try them? Jake's face turned pale. But he reached for a bag anyway. When the familiar smell hit him, he noticed the stamp on the box, Leah's cookies. Leah always put that on any cookies that she'd baked. She made them for him several times, but he had never liked sweets, so he had always given them away. The one thing Leah had made only for him. Now that same set of cookies was in West's hands. What did that mean? Jake's heart twisted. He looked at West, trying to ask, but he couldn't form the words. Just then, West's phone rang. He answered, his voice low. Where are you? Are you lost? He paused and continued in a gentle voice. Dumb. Wait there. I'll come down and get you. He hung up and stood up, about to leave. Jake stiffened. Where are you going, West? West's face went flat and his eyes became colder. He'd always been so relaxed when they hung out that you tended to forget how dangerous and powerful he was. For the first time, he showed some of that power. I'm going to get someone. She's not good with directions. Who needs you to pick her up? West put his coat on and stared at Jake. Someone that I love. The club's gardens were huge. I stood under a tree, getting bored. West told me to stay where I was, so I didn't move. The white houses were hidden behind trees. I didn't know where West would appear from, but all the tension I'd been feeling just seemed to fade away. I sat on a bench, swinging my legs. Then I saw him walking towards me, a tall, slender figure getting closer. Leah, West called my name. I looked at him and forgot to stand up. The night air seemed to grow still. There were crickets in the distance. The man that was walking towards me was someone I'd been very intimate with. But I hadn't seen him for a few days, and now he felt like a stranger. West walked over and cupped my face in his hands. He lifted my face up so it was perfect for a kiss, then he kissed me without hesitation. Everything faded away, my breathing, the oxygen in my lungs, my self-awareness. He finally pulled away, his breath warm against my ear. You're coming home with me tonight. I was about to reply, but I caught sight of Jake. He was right there. His face was dark with shadows, and I couldn't read his eyes. West noticed my change. He straightened and followed my eyes. Stalking me now? He smiled, then took me in his arms. West, I think you need to explain yourself, Jake said, sounding calm. What do you want to know? West tilted his head and kissed my forehead. Got it now? West, Jake's face twisted, I don't think this is okay. Why not? You know that Leah and I. You broke up with her, no? West's hand squeezed my side. Wasn't it you who wanted me to make sure she was okay? I just wanted you to see if she was okay. But not, Jake couldn't say steal her. He had broken up with her, after all. He couldn't tell West off. Jake. West looked down at him. You didn't want her. I do. But, how can you like her? Jake was in shock. I looked at West, surprised. I could only see his strong, handsome face. Why not? She's a great kisser, a good girl, and her cookies taste amazing. The biggest thing was her kindness. She was so shy and yet so brave. When those thugs were harassing that girl that she worked with, she had the courage to protect her. She had been kicked hard, but she hadn't let go of her friend. Maybe that was what drew him in. After that day, he thought about her all the time. Leah. He was too late though. Jake was already chasing after her. And then she became Jake's girl. Until the night that Jake just dumped her for no reason. I had been avoiding West. Jake had come by a few times, but I refused to see him. I was forced to meet him in person when he cornered me outside of my dorm. Leah, it's because of West that you don't want to be with me, right? It's not about him. Jake, we're not a good match. And not just you, West and I are wrong for each other as well. I'm going back to the mainland soon to study for my master's degree. I'm not coming back here. Leah, I admit that I was wrong before. But after our breakup, I realized that I still love you. But I don't feel anything for you anymore. Do you like West then? Jake's eyes were red. I saw you kiss him that night. You didn't push him away. I didn't answer him, unsure of what to say. I had been afraid of West at first. But after a while, I stopped being so scared. As I avoided him, I missed him sometimes. But then reality hit me. A guy like him. He was so privileged. He was a completely different world from me. Is it because he has a better family than me? Believe whatever you want. But Leah, will he marry someone like you? I've never thought about marriage. I want to study. Please don't call me anymore, Jake. Leah, Jake reached for me, but I dodged him. I walked away and didn't look back. West wasn't as bothersome as Jake. He didn't contact me after that. It wasn't until the day before I left that my local friends organized a party. We were saying goodbye, possibly for the last time, and everyone had had a few drinks. I was on my way to the bathroom when two drunk guys cornered me. At first, I hadn't realized that they were staring at me. But when they were still outside of the bathroom as I was leaving, I grew worried. I didn't have my phone or jacket. My dress was simple, but the way these two guys were looking at me made me feel so uncomfortable. "Hey, little girl, let's have a drink together, want to?" "I'm sorry, my friends are waiting for me in the next room." "It's boring with friends, why not have some fun with us?" They blocked my way, one on either side. I felt scared, but I tried to remain calm. I could always call for help from the servers, or from my friends. As long as I screamed, these guys wouldn't do anything serious. But then one of them grabbed my arm, and I was furious. As I tried to get away, the guy suddenly cried out and went flying, crashing into the wall. His friend was kicked in the face. West came into the picture, face dark, and pressed his shoe into the guy's arm. I heard the bone snap, and that was terrifying. For the first time, I saw the ruthless and dangerous side of West that everyone spoke about. I never want to see these two in Hong Kong or Macau ever again. West's bodyguards quickly grabbed the two guys and dragged them away. It was just the two of us. West didn't look at me or say anything. I waited a few moments, then quietly thanked him. He ignored me. I hesitated, then lowered my head and tried to walk around him. West grabbed my wrist. There were still red marks on my arm. West's eyes darkened. "West." I tried to pull my arm away, but West pushed me against the wall. "How long are you going to avoid me? Are you just going to run away back to the mainland?" "I'm just going back to continue my studies like I planned." "So, you're just cutting me out of your life?" I looked away, trying to keep the tears back. We were never really anything. I had to admit, that night when West had said that he liked me, I'd been happy. But I had been avoiding him, and he had stopped showing up. I had started to think that maybe I was just not good enough. It was easier to accept being abandoned, I thought. "Leah, turn around." "What?" West turned around, his back to me. "Look at my back." His black shirt was hiding his skin. I felt confused. He pointed, and I pulled up his shirt. He had long and thick, but old, whip marks across the base of his back. "West," I gasped. "That's why I was avoiding you, I was healing." "What happened?" "Family stuff. They gave me 19 lashes. It hurt like hell, I nearly died." He paused and continued. "If it wasn't for my old man, you wouldn't be able to see me." "Why did they do that to you?" My eyes were blurry. My fingertips were trembling as I reached for the old wounds. But I didn't dare to touch the scars. "Because I don't want to get married for the family. I want to marry the person I want." West turned back, and his fingers gently dried my tears. "I know she is so shy, and she's so proper. I'd kissed her a few times, and if I didn't take responsibility, she'd hide somewhere and cry. I kissed her a few times, and I couldn't stop, so I should just marry her." "I never said I was going to marry you." My voice was hoarse, and tears kept falling. "I let you kiss me first, didn't I? So, now you have to listen to me when I say we're getting married." West was the same as the first time we met. Bossy and scary. "You're so mean. You're always teasing me, and you have been like that from day one. It's how you know that I like you." "But why would you like someone like that?" "I've never liked anyone before. I just don't have the experience." He lowered his head and looked at me, "But I'm willing to learn." West bent down before I could say anything and kissed me hard. He trapped both of my wrists with one hand and forced my head back. He kissed me deep and long, until my legs couldn't hold me up. He then moved his other hand to my waist, pulling me up against him. Between breaths, I saw the door to the private room open. Some of my classmates came out to find me. "Leah, They gasped, then covered their mouths and ran back into the room. Before they ran inside, I heard one whisper, "We saw nothing." My face was burning hot. "A kiss and you're so shy? What will happen if we—" West grabbed my burning cheeks. "Leah, let's get married. If I don't say yes, will you throw me in the ocean?" My eyes were red, but I was also laughing. West seemed to be giving it serious thought. "No, I wouldn't do that. Give me some time, okay?" West nodded. "Fine." After going back to the mainland, I rented a small apartment and started focusing on my master's degree. But before I could have any peace, my father, who I hadn't seen in years, came to my door. His son from his second marriage had dropped out of high school. After a few years, he decided to get married. The girl's family had a disabled brother, so they needed tens of thousands of dollars to buy him a wife. My father and stepmother couldn't afford that, so they had come up with the idea of a trade. Of course, I said no. He exploded and started to beat me like he used to when I was a kid. But then I shoved him away. He was old and worn out. A lifetime of bad habits had taken a toll. I was not the same kid he knew before. "You are not here to do nothing for me. If you don't want to do this, we will have to drag you," he shouted and tried to have his men grab me. As they dragged me out, I dropped my phone, and it had already called West. Before I had left, he had told me to put his phone number on speed dial. He knew some of the stuff that had happened with my family, and he was always concerned. It was funny how things change. The man who used to terrify me was now the first person I wanted to reach out to. I knew, deep down, that he would help me. I knew he would show up to protect me. It was like I had always trusted him to keep me safe. I had been brought to a remote village. It took a day for them to drive into the mountain. By the evening, as the van approached the village, a black Hummer came barreling in and blocked the van. Huge bodyguards jumped out of the car, followed by West. He was wearing a black jacket and shades. I saw him, and my heart did a flip. He looked like those actors from the old movies I watched as a kid. All the men who kidnapped me were scared. Then I heard sirens in the distance. West pushed past them and stared at the man holding my arm. He kicked him and then kicked him again. West got more angry as he saw that my wrists were bound. I could feel his rage. He didn't calm down till we were far away from the village. After he cleaned and bandaged my wrists, he didn't say anything. I put the divider up in the back seat, just like the first time we were together in that car. I climbed on his lap and hugged him. "West, I know that you're still mad." "Yes, I am." I took a deep breath and kissed him lightly on his chin. "I'm trying to make it up to you." He pulled my chin up and pushed my head back. "You're not that easy to get back on my good side. So, what should I do then? You can figure it out by yourself." He looked away and closed his eyes. I wanted to laugh and cry, and I then put my head on his chest. "West, marry me." He didn't say anything, but after a few moments, he hugged me back. The road was rough, and the car bounced. "Leah, stop moving around so much." "It's the car," I said, but the car lurched and I fell. I didn't know who started it, but we were kissing again, as if our lives depended on it. 3 months later, West and I got married quietly. I begged him for a long time so that I could go back to school. He finally agreed to a quiet, secret marriage without a wedding. He only agreed if I accepted that while there would be no wedding, we were having a honeymoon. On our wedding day, West brought me back to our new house. I went to the bathroom and didn't come out. Then, West came to the door. I opened it after a while. The clothes and supplies were already in there. I had to put on the most revealing lingerie. I couldn't bring myself to go out with the clothes on. West had even less on. "Don't pass out, okay?" West picked me up. I tried to cover my body, but the clothes were too small. I was naked. I couldn't open my eyes. West kissed my way down to my chest. "Leah." He kissed me slowly until I could barely breathe. So, you're not small everywhere. West, my face was red, and I was desperate. West grabbed my hands and put them on him. My eyes widened. West. What? It feels different from last time. Which one do you like? This one. I'm scared. West laughed. You really know how to make your man feel good. I remember falling for a moment. And West had to wake me up with a kiss, when I was so tightly wrapped around him. What are you dreaming about? He whispered as he began to move slowly inside me. There was this big field with a lot of fog. It was so big, I couldn't see anything. And there was a big beast. I was scared. I thought I was about to die. And then you showed up in my dream. Did I save you? I shook my head and looked at him with a pout. You killed the beast, but you turned into a scarier one and then, you swallowed me. West laughed. That wasn't wrong. I will eat you. He kissed me and then did it again. I'll be eating you for the rest of my life.